The look back on 2012 continues, this time with the films that came out this year. Now, since this is kind of a bracket to where I'm going to be talking about movies, I'm not just going to be talking about theatrical movies. I'm going to go ahead and include some of the straight-to-videos which came out this year and just kind of compile them all out in one long sweep. This is kind of along the lines of just, we're going to be roller coastering with this. What was good, what was bad, and just what the fuck I could have done without. We saw the conclusion to to a major franchise this year, which had been massively adored by its fans. We also saw the build-up and what we wondered would be a really good or really bad payoff that had been building up since 2008 for a particular franchise. We also saw return to other stories in the forms of prequels with a beloved science fiction film series, and with a particular fantasy series which people will just either love or hate in its film version. And other sequels and remakes which just absolutely bombarded us this year. What was good and what was bad? Let's find out. And since I am including all movies in this, as I said, I am going to go with the straight-to-video brackets too. And funny enough, we're going to start off with one of those right now. Looking back in January, there was one which really sailed under the radar, and it was so horrible, but yet so forgettable that most people did not know about it. Believe it or not, we had a Scorpion King 3 come out this year. Scorpion King 3, and it's very forgettable that I don't remember the title that went along with it. This is actually not like the confusing Rise of a Warrior prequel/sequel which came out in 2008 to tie along with the Tomb of the Dragon Emperor movie with Jet Li. Excuse me. This is one which really sailed under the radar, and if you wasted your time with it, you really made a huge mistake with it. Kind of like I did. Really, to kind of address this, if I could prevent somebody from watching it on down the road, that's kind of why I'm talking about it. This Scorpion King is a fucking snooze fest. Really, the only actors of note in this are Stephen Brand as a bad guy and Ron Perlman in here as a good king who has hired the Scorpion King to take out Stephen Brand's character. Basically, what happened in this movie is that we have some guy who's playing Matthias, apparently the sorceress that he fell in love with at the end of the first movie, and his entire kingdom are gone. We get no mentions in this movie to the paths of evil that he would wind up taking later on in The Mummy Returns. Really, for all the faults that people give Rise of a Warrior, at least it kind of alluded to his turn to evil in that movie. But we get absolutely nothing of quality in this. This is simply put just a money grabber that really went late off of the franchise. I got suckered into it, hopefully, maybe expecting to find an underrated gem in this, and I just got an hour and a half of my life wasted that I will not get back. So, Scorpion King 3, don't fucking waste your time with it. You'll forget about it by the end of this video, probably. Well, a couple of weeks later, we turn to a theatrical release in that same month of January with the fourth installment of the Underworld franchise. This time, Kate Beckinsale returns to play the role of Selene in this movie, and it takes place in the future a la Alien Resurrection style. With the Underworld franchise, the 4 movies that there are, I like the first one. Second one's probably going to be my least favorite. The Rise of the Lycans prequel, which was really, I didn't feel necessary to tell, but still a well-performed story. And then we get this new movie. Now, it's 15 years into the future, and Selene is waking up to find out that she was captured along with Michael by human scientists, and that the War of the Lycans and the vampires has spilt out into the world. In fact, many of the population has died down as a cleansing of these deemed unnatural transformations have taken place, and humanity is, in a sense, at war with itself. Also add to which the fact that we get some Lycans in this movie as bad guys for a change instead of vampires. A lot of people are just saying, this is kind of another Resident Evil spinoff, Kate Beckinsale going out there kicking ass. We find out she has a daughter and no Scott Speedman in this movie, which really kind of leaves me scratching my head as to why he was left out. But there actually is a pretty good story going on in this movie, believe it or not. Added to which you get to see Celine fight a 15-foot tall werewolfzilla in this movie. So this is pretty much a what you see is what you get type of movie, and I think for that I was pretty much satisfied with it. It varies to whether or not you'll like it, but remember this is only the early part, so there's still more to come. February rolls around and we get Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. Now, this is one that I was kind of hesitant into getting into based upon how Nicolas Cage performed in the first movie and with how stupidly it treated its source material to adapt into a big screen story. But, however, this time around, I actually enjoyed this movie. And I'm not just saying that just to, be different and just kind of have, like I'm going against the grain and saying this. No, I actually fucking enjoyed this movie. Alright, Nicolas Cage is batshit crazy. There is no question about that. But the way that he played off the Ghost Rider in this movie and just, the fact that it was done by the two guys who made the Crank movies and you got all the crazy action going on, there is actually some good stuff in this movie. I just want a dumb B movie that I can go into, shut my brain off, and just have some fun watching it. And, I have a hard time understanding, in fact, why people would say that this is worse than what the first movie was. There's a little bit more action in here. The villains could put up a little bit more of a fight than the ones in the first one did. Not much, but just a little bit more of a fight going on. There are some genuinely funny moments in this movie, and if you are looking for just, an adrenaline rush, may give yourself an anxiety attack or go into epilepsy, this is a fun movie. It's 87 minutes. It's just fun, and plus the aesthetic of the Ghost Rider is actually a little bit cooler. This is what the first movie should have been in the first place, and while this is not the perfect adaptation that I have in mind for a film as a Ghost Rider fan, it's probably going to be the best that I see for a while until sometime in the future, knock on wood, that Marvel goes back and decides to reboot this with a different actor besides Nicolas Cage. We roll along to April, and we have a couple of unexpected ones that I went to see. They're sequels, one a comedy and one a fantasy action adventure. With American Reunion, what many people thought of as the fourth installment in the American Pie series, which is actually the eighth, I believe, because of the 4 straight-to-DVD films that took place in between An American Wedding and American Reunion, we reunite the old cast. Now, this is easily a movie that could have gone downhill in terms of quality and just some of the tired old jokes that we see in the formulas of movies, which wait several years to be put back together, and there's just the absolutely stupid and tasteless jokes which are done in this movie, and this movie is not without a share of those. In fact, I actually kind of like this movie because we get to see what people in their 30s are going to be like, albeit not as crazy as what this is, but you get to kind of glance and examine people as they've taken the major steps in life, and we just kind of come back and revisit them years later and just have a good time with it. This is not a movie I would recommend that people buy, but it's at least good for once over if you actually enjoyed the original American Pie movies and can find some entertainment in this. This is probably the most hysterical that you're going to see Jim's dad at as well in this movie, and there's a really nice payoff at the end of the movie, in a sense, for Jim's dad and Stifler's mom at the end of this movie. So there is that to go into. I absolutely enjoyed it. Wrath of the Titans rolled along right after this, and let me wet my whistle. So, Sam Worthington is back in this movie. Perhaps the most wooden actor I've seen outside of Keanu Reeves in this day and age. And he's back with the mullet. And we're taking place 10 years later, and we're kind of taking a sort of half-ass adaptation of a sequel to the original Clash of the Titans that Ray Harryhausen wrote. And we throw it together with a little bit of God of War. Now, in the sense of this movie is actually hailed by a lot of critics as being better than its predecessor. Uh, the re- the reinterpretation of the Clash of Titans from a couple of years ago is mediocre in some areas, but I actually enjoyed the action in it, and it's not a bad popcorn flick for an every once in a while viewing to me. But Wrath of the Titans did so much better in this movie. Um, we still have disposable characters who are brought on screen in this movie, but for once, I actually got invested along with Perseus in this movie. I felt bad for Zeus with him looking back on just kind of the bastard that he's been throughout the ages, and I actually believe that Perseus ended up saving his father from a lot of darkness in this movie. The effects in this movie were so much better because when I went and saw it in 3D, just the half-ass converted 3D from the first movie was horribly done. And this movie right here was only one of two that I experienced in 3D besides Underworld Awakening, to where I actually enjoyed the effects of it. This is, again, not a movie you need buy, but it's actually a good recommendation that I would throw out there, and I do say this probably would wind up in my top 10 favorites from this year. Now, with Wrath of the Titans out of the way, we come to May, and something that has been building up for years, ever since Iron Man, or after the first Iron Man came out in 2008, and Marvel decided to expand upon a shared universe franchise, and lo and behold, we get the Avengers. Every geek's dream was fully satisfied with this movie. There were a few areas that this movie did falter in, but Joss Whedon got brought in, and there's not really much of a point of me talking about this movie. I still can't believe that it exists at this point, but the bar has been raised so much on superhero movies after this come out. This is probably this trumps The Dark Knight as the best superhero movie ever made. Now, comparatively, it's not fair to put The Dark Knight up against the Avengers, but at the same time, the bar has been raised so much as far as just entertainment and just all-around good character development and action in a superhero movie. Whereas most of the movies for the Marvel Studios movies with Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, and Captain America all try to stay in a pseudo-realistic type of way, Whedon comes along and this movie embraces its comic book roots so much. I can't understand why people would complain about the first hour and a half being kind of boring, and any character development in this movie is actually well done. But I will say that good character development in this movie. I might have to quip that we don't spend enough time with Hawkeye as we do with the other ones, but this is a good movie nevertheless. And, look at the last 35 minutes of this movie. You're treated to some of the best action that you've seen on screen in a long time. So, Avengers, definitely the best movie of this year, in my opinion. And then we kind of had to follow up with some other ones after this. Now, it is at this point that I got to working a little bit of overtime in the summer, and unfortunately seeing a lot of the movies that followed in the theaters, then I was put on hold until the fall. So, thankfully it comes along and we get to snatch up some Blu-ray releases, and we have a lot to talk about with some of them. We also return in a prequel form to, what was told may or may not be a prequel to the Alien franchise, and we come along to Prometheus. And yes, I actually own the Blu-ray to this. I actually like this a bit more now that I've had the deleted scenes to it, but let's talk about the theatrical release of it for a minute. Now, with Prometheus, this movie is kind of a 60% hate it, 40% like it type of deal. When I first saw this movie, I did agree that there was a lot of fuckery going on with the script. But Ridley Scott did present some good ideas in this movie, but unfortunately some of them were just not executed well, and the film that we were presented with for the theatrical version really left a lot to be desired. But check out the Blu-ray of this movie because we get about 30 minutes of deleted scenes, which at the end of it don't really help the movie much improve, but it does make things at least make a little bit more sense on a character level in some places. I think really the only thing that I am disappointed with this about is I've heard rumors that Ridley Scott is going on record and saying that he will not recut this into a director's cut, that basically what we saw for a theatrical version is what we get with this, which is disappointing because I think it's not going to answer the questions about where man came from or exploring some of the religious ideas, but it would make more sense on a character level. Some of the tropes that we go and people have talked about that this movie answers a question that we really didn't want to know about where the xenomorphs came from. And it didn't really answer a question about where we came from. Well, after sitting down and mulling over this and watching it a few times, come on, it did answer where we came from. May not be the best of explanations about why they created us in the first place and wanted to destroy us, but there are some really good theories going around about how this could play in for a potential sequel to this movie that could answer a lot of questions. If you want some better views on that, go check out Comic Book Girl 19. She has done an entire plethora of breaking down Prometheus in a lot of ways, and hers is probably the best point of information that you can get on YouTube for a lot of the stuff that surrounds this film. Will it change your mind about the film? Just on a philosophy examination level? Probably not, but at least it will make things a little more sense for you besides just watching the theatrical version and wondering away pissed off. At least try and give some of the ideas around this movie a shot. And just, kind of use your brain and think. This movie may not have answered questions, but at least it got you to thinking about things. Then we come along to another Marvel reboot, which is The Amazing Spider-Man. Now, since things didn't work out with the Raimi films, we get this new one directed by Mark Webb, and we got Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker in this movie. We get to try and explore what happened to Peter's parents. We get a lot of questions thrown out to us that are promised to be answered, but this is getting to be problematic, and it leads into a lot of problems that I have with this movie. Now, I'm going to go on record as saying this, and, please don't flood me with hate mail or death threats or anything like that, but I feel like The Amazing Spider-Man was, in fact, the worst movie that I have seen this year. Basically, the problems that people had with this movie, I have with The Amazing Spider-Man. The idea of saying that you're going to explore what happens with his parents, talk about, his powers and responsibilities, kind of expand upon his relationship with Gwen Stacy, and just explore his younger years. The first problem that I have with this movie, and it's something that has been addressed by many before, is I did not need to see a fucking origin story again. Now, I'll grant you, this movie did the origin story better than what was done over in the first Raimi Spider-Man film. But, however, the problem is that this movie this origin story eats up too much of the movie time. Added to which the prospect of explaining what happened to his parents in this movie is something that is not explained. Now, this movie kind of said it'll give you answers, but we were kind of also told that it would leave you with questions. I expected going into the first Spider-Man to get some answers. I got jack from that. Now, they're proposing a new Amazing Spider-Man trilogy, and I'm still going to go and see the sequel when it comes out. And maybe they could provide some explanation. But every time that I've gone back to try and watch this movie again and again, I become more frustrated with it, and my frustration with it just increases exponentially to where I just flat out dislike the movie. The lizard in this movie is very, very badly done. Now I will say there is some good CGI in this movie, but we kind of had that done last decade with Raimi's Spider-Man movies, and so this is nothing new here. I think really what I can say that is good about this movie is that the actors do the best they can with what they've got. There are some good performances in this movie. I fucking loved Uncle Ben, played by Martin Sheen in this movie. I'm fond of Cliff Robertson from the first Spider-Man movie, but I fucking loved Uncle Ben in this movie. Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker started out kind of slow for me. The thing that I do like, though, is the fact that this is a little bit closer to the Spider-Man that we know in the comics. He is using humor in this movie. He jokes. I mean, like the scene he has with the carjacker at the police station, and then webbing him up on the wall afterwards is fucking hilarious. But the Lizard in this movie, they kind of use him in this movie, and he's just there. And, he kind of hangs around. We're taken away from the Spider-Man story every so often to be reminded of the fact that, oh yeah, we have a villain, and then we're just kind of saving him for the end of the movie. This movie, a lot of people complain that it's like Batman Begins for Spider-Man again. Yeah, okay, it takes a darker point, but it's not Batman Begins. What this is that it's Iron Man 1 for me all over again. The only difference is that, let's face it, I love the first Iron Man movie, but it's a generic origin story that takes up a lot of the movie. The only thing that made the movie worthwhile was the performances done in that movie by its actors, and there was just a much better executed story. This has a lot of jumbled ideas, and it leaves a lot of questions unanswered that it said it was going to take care of. The fact is, in this movie, especially with the third act, the third act of this movie is perhaps the worst third act in this movie. Along with being the worst movie this year, it's the worst third act that I've seen in any movie this year. It throws a lot of ideas out there. We got, Spider-Man is dating Gwen Stacy, and he's also got a police task force looking for him, thanks to Gwen's father going after him. The Lizard wants to turn everybody in the city into lizards. And, this stuff is done. Oh, and the biggest one that irked me. The killer, the guy who killed Uncle Ben in this movie, is never caught in this movie. There's stuff that's thrown out here. It may be solved later on in other movies. Maybe the Uncle Ben plotline could be solved later on, but the fact that it did not even acknowledge that after it was over with, and he kept looking for the guy, but he never found him by the end of the movie, and this is really one of the biggest problems that I have with it. Added to which the fact that at the end of the movie, nothing was done with the guys that were turned into lizards. The thing about, capturing Spider-Man, Captain Stacy and Spider-Man came to working together at the end of the movie to take out the Lizard. That was done way too quickly. And then just the way that it handles the romantic dilemma in between Peter and Gwen at the end of the movie after her dad is killed. His dying breath, George tells Pete, hey, please stay away from my daughter. You're going to have a lot of enemies. I just don't want her getting hurt. And guess what the fuck happens at the end of this movie? He mulls about it for a while, and then, you know what? Let's get back together. Fuck what your dad said. And this is a problem, I've tried approaching this with an open mind every time after, with repeat viewings, but I finally just decided that I just don't like this movie. In the long run, all this was just a repackaging, a cash grab by people who will make Spider-Man movies, reinterpret them how many ever times, because people will still keep going back to Spider-Man movies, and with the fact that, we're trying to appeal to the Twilight demographic. This is Spider-Man mixed with Twilight in some ways, too. Really, no, there's some good parts in this movie, and it's good for a once-over, but really, aside from that, I just have so much that is fucking wrong with this movie. It is, without doubt, the worst movie that I've seen this year. If you enjoyed it, that's fine, but I just absolutely loathe this movie with each and every time that I have to watch it again and again. Well, I have had that on my chest for a long time. It felt good to get off. We're still going. We had The Dark Knight Rises come along. Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that one. Well, what did I think about The Dark Knight Rises? It was one that I was really looking forward to, but just didn't have a chance to see. And for 6 months, I'd heard a lot of good reviews about it, and I've heard a lot of bad reviews about what's wrong with this movie. I'm going to say that at the end of things, I do like The Dark Knight Rises. It is not the best movie that I've seen this year, but I did enjoy the movie, and I didn't wind up hating it as much as I thought I would based upon a lot of the negativity that I heard towards it. This movie is kind of taking, and its problem is that it rehashes. A lot of ideas kind of fall flat in this movie. I enjoyed the actors' performances in this movie. I enjoyed Tom Hardy as Bane in this movie. I actually enjoyed Anne Hathaway as Selena Kyle in this movie. I thought the gadgets were good. I thought a lot of the action sequences were really good. A lot of snafus in this movie, though. There are points in this movie where it falls on a lot of sequelitis. We're rehashing things that have been done in Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. And not just for the fact that, this is a continuance of the story. There are a lot of repeated action scenes that are done that you watch Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, and you see that are done again in this movie. Hell, look at the damn chase at the end of the movie where they're trying to chase Talia and get the nuke back before it blows up Gotham City. Basically, all this did, I'm kind of bashing this movie a little bit because it did rehash a lot of stuff. But, overall, there's still a lot to enjoy about this movie, and I do enjoy the performances in it. I think really the biggest thing that I would have to complain about with this movie is the fact that, even though it's the first two movies combined together, it also throws in some of the plots of RoboCop 3, but it just executes them much better. And, there's the little snafu about how Bane broke Batman's back, and, Batman somehow managed to heal himself up in a few months' time and get back to Gotham in time before the damn bomb blows up. You know what? It's not a perfect movie, but it could have gone way, way worse than what it did. So I think, yeah, it's a fitting conclusion. But when it left off at the end with kind of the Robin reference, no, I don't see that happening. So thank God we finally decided that Joseph Gordon-Levitt would not be playing Batman should they ever do a Justice League movie. So, that's out of the way now. Oh yeah, and I forgot to talk about some of the straight-to-video movies which I had seen this year. I kind of lost track after The Scorpion King. We had 3 DC animated films which came out this year, and I also want to talk about them. Let's start out with Justice League Doom. I did review this one, but I want to kind of go back and talk about this just for the fact that it was one of the last stories that the late Dwayne McDuffie wrote. When I first heard about this movie, I was really excited by its concept of taking Mark Waid's Tower of Babel story and applying it in a Justice League movie. Unfortunately, the execution of this movie just wound up being mediocre. With, kind of the Legion of Doom thing, and it was really, as a person who has seen a lot of these movies, I'm not really trapped in suspense anymore about how well this movie could have been done. I really hate to say it, but this was not a good final story for Dwayne McDuffie, and I think I get kind of the idea that he'd been tired of kind of writing stories for the same superheroes over and over again. And this just wasn't a great movie. It's not a bad movie either, but it's just kind of one of them type movies. I still own it. I still pull it out and watch it, but it is certainly far from the best that I've seen this year. When it comes to the best of the DC direct-to-video movies this year, however, that honor is most specifically going to belong to Superman versus the Elite. This is a movie that I had actually, while ironically I had anticipated Justice League Doom coming out and being disappointed, I was quite the opposite on this movie. I was absolutely just abhorrent to what I expected would be a dumb movie based upon the animation style that I saw in this. However, after hearing a lot of rave reviews about it, I finally checked it out and discovered that this is a damn good movie. The Superman versus the Elite is really well done. It really does a good job of asking the question, how relevant is the Man of Steel in this day and age? And it's based off of a story by, I can't remember who did it, but What's Wrong with Truth, Justice, and the American Way. I absolutely love this movie. I thought George Newbern did a terrific job coming back as Superman. Lois Lane in this movie is probably the best interpretation that I've seen of her in anything. I love because her voice is done by the chick who plays Abby over on NCIS, and she brought enough personality to the role to where I just absolutely love this Lois. Also added to the fact that we had a real dastardly villain come up in Manchester Black and the rest of the Elite in this movie. I think that this is terrific. Probably this is for Superman. This is his Under the Red Hood, like they did for Batman. I highly, highly recommend this movie. You just need to buy it and own it. And then we come to The Dark Knight Returns, which came out this year. This is part one of that. Dark Knight Returns with Peter Weller doing the voice of Batman. That's right, we have RoboCop in this movie doing Batman. And this is sort of just taking as much as they can and being as true as they can to Frank Miller's graphic novel. And we'll be getting the second part next month, towards the end of the next month, actually. This is really good. I think really the only part that I have to complain about is the fact that at some points this movie feels like it was done in the 1980s, and at other times it feels like they're trying to do it in a modern day setting. But, I mean, like, this is a really good movie all the way around. It's certainly a far cry from what they did with Batman Year One last year, where they just took, an okay story and just made probably one of the most mediocre, I mean, like, Batman Year One was more mediocre than Justice League Doom. I mean, it was so mediocre it was bad, and somehow they managed to ignore that. This movie has a lot of personality going to it. The adaptation of Frank Miller's art style into this movie was terrifically well done, and there's just a lot of solid performances in it all the way around. So when it comes to the straight-to-video bracket this year, a lot more yays than nays for me on that. So there is that, and we do have the second part of The Dark Knight Returns to look forward to next month as well. So all in all, with 2012, I've been more satisfied than I have been disappointed with the movies. There are some in there that I wish they just hadn't done, or at least could have done better with. I love The Amazing fucking Spider-Man. But overall, 2012 this year for the movies has done really good. So take some of my recommendations, check them out. Gonna check out The Hobbit and see what that's done and see how well Skyfall measures up to. And you know what? 2012 has been great for movies, and I really look forward to what's going to come with 2013.